How's that?
Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I do, again, apologize for the any connectivity issues. I hope they've been resolved. If not, please feel free to shoot me a direct message, and we can try and work through it with you guys. My name is Rebecca Patent. I am a Leadership Annual Giving Officer for the UNLV Foundation here at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I will be the moderator for this session. As a reminder, please remain muted and have your camera turned off throughout the duration of this session. This will help us ensure the audio and video quality of the meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be sent to you along with the presentation slides at the conclusion of today's event. If you do have any questions, please place them in the chat box on the right side of your screen, and we will do our best to answer them during the allotted time at the end of the session. Please do not send any questions or messages to the presenters, as they will not be able to see the chat function while they are sharing their screen. Please send them to everyone, or as I mentioned, a private message to myself. At the end of the summit, please also remember to fill out the post-event survey found on the summit website. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Mary Anne Christensen. Mac?
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. I'd like to introduce myself, as I'm an assistant director of the Disability Resource Center, and I'd like to introduce you to Jim FItzsimmons, my collaborator on this presentation, who is the director of fitness and recreation sports. And Jim's going to take it away.
Okay. So first slide, picture the Nevada campus. I'm actually in that building on the right-hand side down in that little corner right now. Anyways, okay. So the fitness center is located directly across from the Union and the Knowledge Center. We changed our name from 94 to 2016. We were Campus Recreation and Wellness, and we made a conscious effort. In 2017, we became Fitness and Recreational Sports, and everyone gets a strange look on their face when I say this was an intentional effort to actually distance ourselves from wellness. People are like, "Oh my gosh, why?" I've worked in this industry, this profession, for more than 30 years. Wellness is a concept that actually started in the private sector and then moved over into the municipalities, school districts, cities, things like that. By and large, it has not been a hugely successful concept. And part of this has to do with the definition and the multiple definitions out there and the inability to measure what is in those definitions. So it's difficult to demonstrate success. The other and probably more important piece of this is that when we look at fitness, and we call it human work capacity or work capacity, when we look at its contributions and the role it plays in overall health, both mental and physical, and then we look at the definition of recreation, which recreation is those activities that we do in our leisure time, with leisure time being identified as that time that's not obligated by the tasks of daily living. When we look at the importance of maintaining and improving your fitness, it is absolutely something that cannot be relegated to your leisure time, something that you sometimes get to, maybe you don't, maybe it's not really a focus. It is as important as nutrition. It is as important as sleep. It's one of the big three in both mental and physical human health. Optimum health absolutely cannot exist in the absence of fitness. And so I promise this is going to go somewhere. I just want to run through the numbers and talk about why we are at where we're at. And so if we talk about cancer in the United States, about 11% of our population has cancer. About 9% of our population is diabetic. And the horrible thing about diabetes is our fastest growing population is children under 10. Heart disease, about 12% of the population. Alzheimer's, 0.017. Addicted opioids, 0.0084%. 68% of Americans are overweight or obese. And those numbers actually drive not the opioid, but Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, cancer. Many of formats of those diseases, and especially heart disease and diabetes and many forms of cancer, are secondary to overweight and obesity. And actually, overweight and obesity in general terms is actually secondary to low work capacity or low fitness. Not saying that you can't be heavy and be fit, and we've got some information on that. But the way we look at this is that the base of our disease pyramid is physical, what we call physical inactivity, and deranged metabolic patterns, and then it builds up. So that's the base of ours. We define fitness as work capacity, and we define it and measure it as force times distance divided by time. So that is work. That's average power. That's really the only way you can measure it. And that's the only way you can measure improvements in fitness is you take the work. If you're doing the work faster, your fitness is improving. More work in the same amount of time, your fitness is improving. When it goes the other direction, that's a decline in fitness or work capacity. And as work capacity increases, everything that medicine wants to measure, whether it's lipids, whether it's glucose tolerance, whether it's blood pressure, whether it's heart rate, whether it's body composition, all of those things go in the direction we want them to go in. So we call it the rule to rule all rules, which all I need to know is your work capacity. If your work capacity is improving, everything is probably going in the right direction. Intensity within how we improve our fitness or our work capacity, and this is something no one ever wants to talk about, is intensity does matter. It is the single most important variable in increasing your work capacity or fitness. If the stress on the human body isn't greater than what it's been normally experiencing, we don't adapt. So it is the most important part. We're going to jump back a few years, decades really. And so in the early 80s is when the CDC's first run at physical activity guidelines for Americans, and ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine, they jumped on the bandwagon as well. They actually changed the language from physical fitness to physical activity. And that's problematic because the definition of physical activity is any movement caused by skeletal muscles. So this is physical activity. Blinking is physical activity. Chewing gum is physical activity. Physical fitness is on an entirely different order, and they changed the language intentionally so that they could decrease the requirements for physical education in our public schools. This resulted in a whole ton of research being done on the role that fitness plays in overall health. And so I'm gonna touch on a couple of studies that were done really quick. So Barlow looked at overweight men and demonstrated higher mortality rates than normal weight men. No big deal, right there. It's kind of an expectation. Then they looked at fit men, those who exercise regularly 3 times per week, and they had comparable mortality rates regardless of BMI. So no matter where their body mass index was, and body mass index is a horrible measurement, but I have a BMI of 31. I am morbidly obese by BMI. But we looked at the differentiation in BMI and whether they were fit, whether they were working out, and we saw comparable mortality rates. The real kicker in this study, though, was that normal weight men who were unfit were nearly 3 times as likely to die prematurely than their overweight counterparts who exercised. So there's something going on here. There's some protective feature of fitness, of maintaining your fitness. And a couple other slides, just really quick. You know, when we look at normal weight, overweight, and obese individuals, and we look at being fit, unfit, being a non-smoker, being a smoker, still the greatest relative risk to early death and morbidities is being unfit. When we break this down and we look at males versus females, and we look at cigarette smoking and high systolic blood pressure and high total cholesterol and BMIs, still the greatest single risk factor is low fitness. So those were done, 20 years ago. They were in the literature in the 90s. These studies are being repeated now. Same results, is that being unfit is still the worst prognosis you can have for early death. Greater than being hypertensive, greater than being diabetic, greater than being a current smoker. I put this slide in here because we get asked to do a lot of collaborative work with different departments on campus and in the community, and a lot of it relates around stress, and it's always coached as, hey, we want to do something with fitness and stress, and we're like, cool, let's do this thing. And they always come back and say, we'd really like to do a yoga class, or we'd like to do some form of meditation. And the bottom line is that doesn't jive with the science. It doesn't jive with what we know about stress relief. And actually, there's a dark side to meditation, which for most people, meditation will actually become an obsession session on negativity. And so, unless you're really skilled at it or you have a skilled guide, there is a potential downside to it. The stress, the general adaptive syndrome, was coined in 1936. Dr. Hans Seeley, he is the man who kind of did all the seminal work in this. And there is a single non-specific human response to stress. It's a physiologic response. It's a cascade. We only have one. We don't have multiple responses to stress from a physiologic standpoint. Our body only responds to it in one way. And it's this cascade of events, and it's in response to a stressor that's real or imagined. And that is important because something that may stress me out may not bother you guys at all. I might see a spider and know that that spider's in my office and be completely freaked out about it. My body's going to go through that general adaptive syndrome. You're in the same office as me. Spiders don't bother you. So you don't go through that cascade of emotions and physiologic response. The thing is that this response is in an acute setting. It's driven by my sympathetic nervous system. And it upregulated me to get ready to either run or fight. It was important for us to survive as a species. It doesn't take into account, it did not take into account chronic stress that goes on for days, weeks, months, because our sympathetic nervous system cannot maintain that upregulation. And so our endocrine system steps in and it takes over to keep us ready to fight or run. Unfortunately, it's driven by cortisol, and cortisol is a massively destructive hormone. It is the reason why the president goes into the office looking amazing and comes out with gray hair and looking like their skin's sliding off their face. Chronically, cortisol is bad news for the human body. It's bad news for our physiology. The only way to de-escalate this cascade of responses is intense exercise or physical movement. I don't want to say physical activity, but the bottom line is that the only way that response is de-escalated is through intense movement. And so when we get that, I often, I'm like, well, so what we want to use is intense exercise. We want to do something that gets people up and moving. And people always want to come back to yoga. And I'm like, nope, in the science, in the literature, it just doesn't work. It's just not the intervention that we need. So we use the fitness, sickness, wellness continuum a lot, or the sickness, wellness, fitness continuum. With sickness being over on the left-hand side, wellness is in the middle, and fitness is on the far right-hand side. We want people to be fit. Yeah, you have to pass through wellness on the way to fitness, and that's awesome. All of those things that we want to try to measure. And really, with wellness, fortunately, unfortunately, depends how you look at it, what we end up coming down to really is clinical measurements to see if the interventions are working. And we want to push people past that. For me, wellness is really about embracing mediocrity. And that's not what I want for anyone. I want everybody to move towards fitness. And so in our program nationally is very different. This building is very different from anything you'll run into on other campuses. We developed years and years and years ago, we developed what we called our Fitlosophy, not philosophy, but our Fitlosophy. And these tenets are what drive everything in our program. And we kind of break it down into two sides. We've got what we call on the left hand our plus side. On the other, the right hand column is what we call our negative side. But these tenets are what drive everything from what we program, what we communicate, what goes out on our social media, every last piece of equipment that we purchase, and how we set our spaces up. Our focus is on work capacity. We want to see people increasing their work capacity, which means that's married to intensity. So all of our programs are really tied to fairly high intensity movement. We break down routines. We don't want people working in a unimodal environment. If somebody says I'm a runner, I'm like, hey, that's great. You need to be gunning some heavy weights. Somebody says, oh, I'm only a power lifter. I'm like, hey, that's great. You need to be running, rowing, and swimming in combination with that. Fitness is not married to this fitness center. Fitness is not married to these contrived pieces of equipment. We can do it anywheres. And we do have a lot of collaborations on campus. I'm bringing this around, I promise. So we do one of our most successful ones, and this is actually a national model. It's amazing. Is our Mind Body Project. And the counseling center, we work with a specific counselor in the counseling center. She creates the cohorts of students that are referred into the counseling center from a variety of places on campus, specifically for anxiety, depression, and stress. The counselor works with our fitness instructors with that cohort. We do group fitness with them. It is high intensity fitness, After the fitness session, they go into a group counseling session. The counselor participates in the fitness piece, and the fitness instructor participates in the group counseling piece. No one else in the nation's doing this. The results as far as decreasing anxiety, depression, and stress, absolutely profound. The counselor that works with us, she feels that this is the most profound thing she has ever done with students. Police services, we partnership with police services. They teach all of the self-defense on campus. They teach it both in a non-credit format and a credit format. And the reason why we do this is anytime there's an incident on campus, pretty much anybody that has any experience with martial arts starts calling us saying, hey, I want to teach self-defense to your students. And we don't know who they are. We don't know what curriculum they're going to present. But probably the best part about this is it takes our police officers and it puts them in a setting with students, in large groups of students on a regular basis. They teach two curriculums. They teach one which is called the RAD curriculum, and then they teach another one which is called Girls on Guard. Both of them are nationally accepted curriculum, and they're standardized. But the awesome part is the relationships it creates between the police officers and large groups of students. Kinesiology, we teach a number of the kinesiology classes. We also employ a tremendous number of the kinesiology majors. We teach them to be fitness instructors. They teach here. We host all of their labs. So it's a really good partnership between the student services side of the house and the academic side of the house. And I think those are very important. With MAX program, Disability Resource Center, we have the Summer Bridge program, which has mentors and mentees exercising together. It's one of the ways that they find common ground and kick off that mentorship relationship. And we have a new one that's in the pipeline where we're going to take the kinesiology majors who are in the chronic disease class. And then within the DRC, they have students who have specific chronic diseases. And so they're in a class that's called Exercise Prescription for Chronic Disease. Those students are now going to go hands-on with the DRC students. They're going to do it here under our supervision, and we're going to work back and forth with the kinesiology department to make sure that the prescriptions are appropriate and students are supervised. But it's going to be a win-win for everyone involved. I talk about cultural competencies in fitness. And so if you come in this building, it's very different when you get inside here from probably any gym that you've ever seen. There's lots of open spaces. We have climbing ropes all over the place. We have fight rigs all over the place. We have gymnastic rings. You can push sleds. You can flip tires. There's chalk buckets all over the place. We've got little hidden gyms. We've got traditional, what you would consider kind of traditional North American concepts in, selectorized equipment and treadmills and things like that. But the thing that's important to remember is that most of the gyms on campuses that you walk into, a lot of them look like this photo, right? Which this is a very narrow North American concept of fitness. Many of our students are international students. If they're anywhere from outside the United States, odds are their physical education, their sport is grounded in martial arts. It's grounded in gymnastics. It's grounded in a fitness model. In the United States, we use the sports model, which is the least efficacious model there is available, but we rely on it heavily. And so when these students walk into the fitness center, nothing in a typical fitness center resonates with them. Not culturally. The way people engage in fitness and sport is an important cultural identifier. You can take an ethnographic approach to it. When they walk into most fitness centers in the United States, nothing there resonates for them. In this fitness center, they understand how to work out on a set of rings. They understand what a 4-point fight rig is about. They understand what a boxing room is about. They understand how to use open space and climbing ropes and pegboards because they're grounded in gymnastics, so they're grounded in martial arts. And so that is the way our building's set up. And it's amazing. Our youth demographics definitively speak to this. Interviews and focus groups with different groups of international students completely speak to this. It has altered how our students train on this campus. When folks from other campuses visit here, they can't believe that 50% of our power rack use is females, and that they're squatting and they're cleaning and that they're snatching and that they're taking heavy barbells overhead. That our students would really prefer to train in those modalities than 20 minutes on an elliptical and a couple of machines. And so it's how we've created an entirely different appreciation and culture for fitness on this campus. Okay, so any questions before we shift gears into Mac's presentation? Okay, Mac, it's all about you.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to talk about the DRC Peer Mentor Program. And that started about 8 years ago. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the program itself, how it was developed, why we developed it, kind of review the mentor process and what our strategies are for fostering social relationships and the campus collaborations, and then some takeaways. So I'm an assistant director at the Disability Resource Center. We currently serve about 2,800 students on campus, about 13% of the total UNR student population. We generally see about a 10% increase yearly of students seeking accommodations through our office. And we still average about at least 10 intakes a week. Even during the time of COVID, we've been open and ready for business and accommodating people. So one of the things we noticed, and you can go to the next slide, Jim, we have always had transition programs through our office for students with disabilities, whether it's a math core equivalency course that we still offer. We've done transition fairs, technology fairs. We collaborate with local high schools. We go out into the communities. We do special education nights, expedite EPs. But what my director and I saw was that there was a real sense of isolation on campus. And we know from data that the #1 reason that students leave is that they don't feel like they belong. And we knew that our students were kind of having that sense of isolation and maybe not making connections that they could have if they felt more engaged with the community on campus. So we looked around, and there were a couple of universities, and I say a couple, maybe 5, that were actually trying mentoring between students with disabilities. And we thought, well, let's give this a try. So the program actually started, if you want to go to the next slide, Jim. The program actually started, these are, oh gosh, a couple years in, some mentors and their mentees during celebrations or just meeting. But it started with 2 PhD candidates who came to us. They were both students at the DRC, and they really wanted to get to talk to another PhD candidate. They were in totally different programs, but they just wanted to have somebody to share with, and not necessarily with us, you know, with each other. So we set them up. We gave them some guidelines loosely. They decided, and Jim's going to love this, that they wanted to work out together, and then, you know, go get a cup of coffee or whatever they would do. And they did it for a semester, came back and reported that it was very meaningful for them to have that relationship. And we kind of set about structuring a program. And the goal of the program was to build connections between new and more experienced students with disabilities to promote academic success and personal growth. And that's how it started. It's changed quite a bit since then, but that's how we started. So next slide. We developed goals for mentors, thinking that they would develop leadership and communication skills. They'd gain patience and insight. They'd learn about different people. They'd acquire experience for future careers. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Form new and rewarding interpersonal relationships, which turned out to be the most important thing, and foster a sense of belonging as part of the university campus community. Our mentee goals were very different. Whoop, can we go back one, Jim?
All right. There we go, mentee goals.
Perfect. So it was a little bit different for mentees. What we also often see at the DRC is that there's not a lot of students that can advocate for themselves or who are very autonomous when they come to the university. So we wanted to have the mentors help them develop those skills. We wanted them to be able to use campus resources very effectively and know how to navigate the college environment. we wanted them to gain new self-awareness about how their disability impacts their learning. What are they bringing to the table that might impact how they learn? And we wanted to help them develop some academic strategies like time management and organization, study skills. Okay, so next slide. We did figure out about 3 years in that this was really a social wellness program. And one of the things that we did was we had an event where we gave everybody a blank wellness wheel, and we talked to them about the wellness wheel, and we let them develop as a goal to have their own vision boards and to create between the mentor and mentee their own social wellness wheels. And then at graduation, we always do a party at the end of every semester. They'd present their vision boards. So that was really a great way. And we were convinced after that that this was truly going to be a social wellness program because it needed to be individualized. And what was important for one group might not be important for another. Next slide. So the program became matching incoming students with disabilities and upperclassmen or graduate students. We soon learned that we didn't even match it that way. There were people that weren't with the Disability Resource Center that wanted to mentor. And so the program eventually grew into administrative faculty and faculty members wanting to mentor an incoming student. And the mentors use their knowledge of campus life, their knowledge of resources, and their personal experiences to provide invaluable advice and guidance to mentees. So the requirements are, when we first started, we didn't have too many requirements, and that didn't work very well. So we developed that a structure that they agreed to, which was that there needs to be weekly mentor-mentee meetings, whether it's 15 minutes or 3 hours. Actually, we pair them up and they decide when they're going to meet and how they're going to meet and what they're going to do. They set about their goals, and we have mentor status reports, and the mentor checks in with us and lets us know what they've been doing, what their goal is for the next week. And it can be anything from learning how to navigate campus resources to where they're going to eat to how they're going to work out. They also agree that they're going to go to monthly professionally led trainings that we all agree on through the DRC, and monthly case review sessions. And those were just for the mentors to begin with. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. So the recruitment looks something like mentors and mentees being recruited in-house, but it's really through referrals. We have an application that's online that we see people use all the time, and then direct invitation. And by that, I mean that we look for mentors who usually are juniors and seniors or above, and that they have a decent GPA. And we recruit that way and send them a letter as to their interests and if they're interested in doing it, participating in our program, and then we interview them. So we work in collaboration with other mentor programs, student government, School of Medicine, counseling services is a huge part of our program, Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Just anybody who wants to partner with us. We do a lot with Nevada Money Mentors, and it's all turned out to be great. But we keep changing things up. At one point, we had a student that was teaching yoga, and so we had yoga sessions on Saturdays. The program is really driven by the students who are in it and what they want to see happen and what their goals are. So next slide, there's an application process, like I said. And we review those applicants and look over their goals and preferences and interests. And then we actually take a mentor and mentee and we put them in a room together and we let them figure out their goals and meet each other. They can also, what mentors get and mentees, they can take a 1-credit class each semester if they need a credit. And the mentors receive a $100 class stipend for each semester that they participate, and that goes towards class fees. So the application looks like we talk about the class standing, college, major, list of preferences to be matched. And we don't put a lot of weight on that unless there's a real specific need when we interview the mentor. But we do ask major, gender, disability condition, etc. We ask them what they hope to gain from the program and what their interests and hobbies are and foods and what they like to do. And that's what the applications, both applications for mentor and mentee look like. Next slide. So we do have guidelines that each one of them signs, and that's one of the things that we had to do to build more structure in. Students who are part of this program do represent the DRC, and they have to adhere to confidentiality guidelines and the UNR Code of Conduct. Attendance is required, and they sign an agreement that they will come to these trainings and events, and that they will contact each other once a week at least. Students will not share personal or academic information because they're both going to learn stuff about each other that is not to be shared, or they might overhear information about other students if they're meeting in the DRC. So we make sure they understand their roles, and they're required to notify me or my co-coordinator if the mentee expresses intent to harm themselves or others, or if the mentor reports sexual misconduct, sexual harassment, and or discrimination. And they both sign agreements to this. So the mentee going in knows that if he confides in the mentor, and if there's something that they need to bring to our attention, they will do that. Next slide. So the students have a lot of fun with their weekly mentor reports. Besides talking about their goals, what they did, what they learned about a roommate situation, or if a student was struggling in an area they wanted to help them with, they love to upload pictures of what they're doing. And these are just some examples of the weekly reports we get with students having fun, and they can upload it into the report itself that's on our website. Next slide. So the professionally led trainings I talked about are actually at the suggestion, most of them, of the students and what they want to see, but we've worked with the School of Medicine. We work with other academic departments, Title IX, Student Conduct, the Career Studio. We work with them each spring to do a really nice career fair in advance of the main campus career fair, which is a fabulous opportunity for the students who are in the mentor program. We work with the Office of Inclusion and Diversity and Counseling Services, as I've said, and many, many, many more that we couldn't fit on the slide. Next, some of the session topics. We almost always do something on listening skills, social wellness, and personal growth. Self-care is a big topic that we talk about with our students, especially with everything that happens these days and with COVID. We talk a lot about burnout. We usually have sessions on burnout each semester, and our ever popular Relationships 101 that we offer every semester. And really what that looks like can be anything from dating to how to make a friend. And those were all suggestions from students who wanted to see that. We do implicit bias training. As I said, we've talked about the Career Expo, and the neurodiversity panel was a new one. And again, this was a student's idea. Next slide. And so the schedule for spring, which is the reason I'm showing you this, we had a welcome pancake breakfast that we did in collaboration with the center, another one of our great collaborators. And then we had an ice cream anti-social for all their mentors in that program, as well as ours. And it was a big hit. And really, we didn't expect the students to do anything but show up and eat ice cream, and they could be by themselves or they could hang out. And it went way past the time frame that it was supposed to, because everybody enjoyed not having any kind of a role except to hang out and talk and eat ice cream. We went to the Career Expo, and then we had one of our process groups. And we didn't get any further than that because of COVID as far as meeting in person. So all these meetings were done in person up until that point. I will point out to you that the mentor process group is a very, very important part. And it was so important that the mentees decided they wanted their own process group. Mentors do process groups with our great partners in counseling services. And it is a chance for all the mentors to get together, to talk about what's going on with them, if they're having any issues, to talk about what's happening with their mentees, to learn some strategies from other mentors and the counseling leadership on how to reach out to their mentees or how to work with them in a different way. And it's really one of the most important things that the mentors do. And they evaluate all their sessions, and they evaluate this time as one of the most important things that they do in the program, besides spending time with their mentees. So the reason I showed you this, and leading up to our spring graduation celebration, is on the next slide because, of course, we all know what happened in the spring of 2020. And we really were challenged to figure out how to keep the DRC Peer Mentor program going with all of us leaving campus in March and what happened that first semester. But we did it. We went online. We were all learning about Zoom. I had 2 interns that semester that had the great idea of starting a social hour online. And as much as everybody was Zoomed out, because it was led by mentors and students, people really liked the social hour. And so we added that on, and they did it about 4 times during the semester, where people could just have an open Zoom space. They could talk about what they were doing. They could paint together if they wanted to. They could watch a movie together, but just share some time that was downtime where they weren't doing other things. So that turned out to be a really great addition that, again, was student driven and was started by some student interns who thought it would be a good idea. Next slide. I'm watching my time here. So this is how it continued. These were the pictures that they would send in. You see people hiking and still going and hanging out, doing things together, being in activities together. There were a lot more. People were rock climbing, doing all sorts of things, anything that they could do to be together in a safe manner. And so the program did continue. Next slide. So again, student-driven programming ideas really come from our students. And that neurodiversity panel is what we're going to talk about in a minute and what that led to. Students develop initiatives and participate in campus-wide activities that they share. So on our next slide, the motivation for mentors really, really is about relationships. And really, to a person, we'll say when we interview them, why do you want to do this? And it is because they want to give back and meet somebody new and help somebody that was there in their spot, which is just incredible. And that's almost everyone on their application believes that and says that. So that is the motivation. Next slide. So the key takeaways from this program were the flexible mentor-mentee pairing, social network, sense of community. Definitely benefits the DRC because if there's something, we serve so many students, as we showed you, that we really can't keep up with every one of them on an individual basis, on a weekly basis, but those mentors do. And if there's something that needs to come to our attention, they let us know. And in that way, we're really able to help students who might need help right then. And if it was just as counselors, we might not hear about it until the end of the semester. Again, it's very student-driven programming, so students are really engaged, and it fosters definitely academic success, personal growth, and health. It is evaluated very highly, very well most semesters, but we take everything into consideration for suggestions or things that we could improve on from the students and their evaluations. Next slide. Oh, so this is really short, but it's really great. And if you can hang in there, we can show you this little video. Eric on the left is a mentee, and Craig is his mentor.
Oh, how we want. There we go.
Hi, my name is Eric Clark, and I'm going to talk about my mentee experience and my mentor, Craig, over here. We grew a really great relationship right off the bat. I mean, me and him were be really good friends, probably right off the bat, because of our sense of humor is the same, and we just get along over stuff. We have a lot of stuff in common, except Star Wars, and he's always there, been there for me. We've always had a good time, never really a dull moment. Always supports me with schoolwork, social life, family stuff, and just being an overall better person. So I really appreciate Greg for all the stuff he's done for me last year.
So as a mentee in the DRC Peer Mentor Program, what things would you say contributed to your successes here at the University of Nevada?
For me, it was moral support from you, my family, and friends. College is a really difficult time to figure out who you are and what you want to do with your life in the future, but also enjoy it. So without you, family, and friends, it would have been a really hard time trying to figure out not only just school, but who I am as a person and what I can do. And you've always been there for me and always helped me out whenever I really needed it. And I appreciate it so much because it's gotten me to this point in this part in school.
And it's not been all business either. We've had fun? You play video games and
Gone fishing. We got meals, we got cooking, we got all this good stuff.
yeah.
It's more of a friendship, if you ask me.
It is. And that's, I mean, then that's kind of the whole point, you know, you gotta meet the needs of the mentee.
Oh yeah, everyday life stuff to make the program work even better. If you have someone you don't want to like hang out with or be around with, then the program will work. But with me and you get along like two peas in a pod. Yeah, exactly.
So thanks. That in a nutshell is the magic that happens with the DRC Peer Mentor Program. Those two people couldn't be more different. And they found commonality and learned about each other and did fun things. And really, Craig really helped Eric graduate from this university and have a much healthier, happier outlook when he was here. So the bigger picture really quick, I know we're running down on time. We started a little bit late. If we can go to the next slide, I'll just rip through this really quick so we can keep talking. So one of the things that happened when all this group gets together is, number one, they decided that for future graduates of UNR, they really thought it would be great if they had something that represented access and accessibility, and that they made it. Or they wanted to support a family member who had a disability, and they wanted to do it at commencement. So they came up, I couldn't believe it, it was 50 of them, and they all agreed on the same color, that they wanted a lilac tassel and braid for graduation to support accessibility. And that neurodiversity initiative, that was started by a student too. And one student, don't ever think that one person cannot make a difference, but it started the neurodiversity initiative at UNR. And for those of you who don't know about neurodiversity, it's the idea that you're recognizing the variability in the human brain and having respect for those differences that might look like ADHD, mood, mental health issues, learning styles, autism, learning issues, and supporting them from a more universally designed perspective. That started with one student, and we had so much interest from the campus community as well as the Northern Nevada community, who joined in and were really supportive of neurodiversity. That led to ASUN passing a resolution on the lilac tassel. And that led to Faculty Senate deciding they wanted to study the possibility of the neurodiversity initiative on campus, which led to us starting a student working group who would work with faculty on neurodiversity. And it's come full circle, even more than that. And as part of that, we also now have a summer bridge to FIT, which is a number of students who are incoming freshmen. If we go to the next slide, I'll show it to you. For the first time last year, we secured enough funding for 12 incoming students who were neurodiverse to have a 2-day workshop before Nevada FIT. And of course, we all know that COVID kept going and we didn't have Nevada FIT, but it was supposed to be a bridge to FIT. So we had 2 days, 16 sessions. We ended up having to do it online. And it was wonderful. Each student received a laptop or an iPad, and we trained them on technology. We worked with every different office in PSAC and all the services that a student would learn. And they started with their mentor in the summer. So they already had a connection at UNR, and all those mentors and mentees, I'm happy to say, even now are still together. The other good thing is that because the program was a success, we're now looking forward to our first in-person summer bridge with more students who will be able to receive more technology. So there'll be 25 students who will be able to participate, and there'll be 25 mentors who will be helping them and following them for the semesters to come. Let's see, next slide. So lilac tassel graduation, there you go. And we have another slide of that as well. And again, we partner with the center and other people who are interested in supporting access on campus. And when they graduate, even if they're faculty, they might want a lilac tassel and braid. So it's been very successful in promoting neurodiversity. Next slide. And this is one of our graduations, and this was our fall graduation. Again, we've given out over 60 tassels and braids, and we have people asking from other departments again this year for our spring commencement celebration. So don't ever think one person can't make a difference, and that's been the power of this program, is in the relationships and the people who make it. And that's really about all I have to say. I know we had to kind of rip through it because Jim was so talkative in this session that we really ran out of time, but just kidding, Jim.
Daddy.
I think we're out of time, but thank you all for coming. If you have any questions, I'm just seeing thank yous, but if you have any questions, you know where Jim and I live. You can pretty much get a hold of us. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you both. This was really wonderful to hear all the good work that is being done.
Thanks, Jackie.
Okay.
Jim and Mac, thank you so much for your time today. I do apologize for the late start. I appreciate you working it in there, though. You guys both did wonderfully.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was Jim just talking so much that
Oh, yeah.
so much to
Known
share.
for my chattiness.
A regular chatty Cathy over there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Have a wonderful day,
It was great.
guys.
Guys,
Yeah,
Bye.
we'll get together soon.
Good, I
Bye.
hope so.
I
Bye,
hope so
guys.
too. Bye, Jim. Have a great weekend.